Welcome, everybody. Super excited to have you today for another session as part of the launch series of our Gust founder curriculum. Super excited today to have Kelvin and Jessica from Brevity. They're going to talk to you all about pitching, both from the emotional angle and the tactical angle. As many of you know, hopefully all of you, pitching is basically a full-time job when you're a founder, and it can be really, really scary, especially for folks coming from individual contribution backgrounds or backgrounds where you haven't had to talk to people a ton. So super excited today. I think this is a topic that that applies really to everybody here throughout so much of the stuff that you have to do as a founder. And the software is really cool and the people are really cool. So we're psyched. We will be recording this. We will send out a follow-up email with the recording. So don't sweat it. I know you all are going to ask anyway. That's totally fine. During the webinar, you can ask questions in the Q&A. Jessica may also be dropping some questions in the chat, poll style. So feel free to jump in, ask questions, and participate in those. We will have some time for questions at the end. And I think that's it from an intro standpoint. Kelvin, thanks for being here. I will hand it off to you.
Peter, thank you and the Gust family for having us a part of this. My name is Kelvin Johnson. I'm one of the co-founders at Brevity, AI-powered software that helps people craft and deliver persuasive pitches and presentations. But also we help people with how to overcome the objections that you get in the sales process and also the fundraising process. And proud to one of our newest team members, Jessica Berg, special place in my heart. We ironically worked together. She was a director at the Minnesota Cup. I'll let her introduce herself and kind of talk a little bit about why she joined Brevity, and we'll do a little quick video on how Brevity works, and then we'll get into the rest of our discussion today.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. Thanks again, Peter and the Gust team for having us. As Kelvin mentioned, my name is Jessica. I've had kind of an interesting career path, done a lot of sales strategy and other consulting type jobs, but I was most recently the director of an early stage startup competition that was focused just on Minnesota founders, but led to me needing to personally coach and give feedback and advice and, emotional support and counsel to often upwards of 90 to 100 founders every summer. And it's stuff that I absolutely love doing. I think it's fun and interesting, and I just love working with founders and sort of helping them craft better messages. But I just straight up could not do that well for that many companies within my program. So I got to know Kelvin a couple years ago in the capacity of having him come in as a subject matter expert and support the founders that went through our program. So yeah, I was an early user and hopefully did a little bit to help him kind of test out and validate things when things were early for him. But yeah, I've just been floored by how far the product has come, and now I'm a full-time team member. He hired me away from my other job. So happy to be part of this, and you'll mostly be hearing from Kelvin, but just to tee up what the format we have, in part to help me keep him Brevity and keep us moving. I'm gonna do a little bit of this in an interview style format where I'm asking him some of his founder story questions. So just, but yeah, hey again, thanks for having us. And Kelvin, I'll tee it back over to you if you want to kind of give them that super level set, quick overview of what we do.
Let's let the video do it. Let me know if you guys can see the screen.
Thumbs up.
Looking good.
How do you craft the perfect pitch? How do you concisely explain complex ideas? How do you get people to believe in the things you say? With Brevity, you follow a step-by-step process. Start by identifying the dominant personality type of the audience you'll be presenting to. Then select your pitch framework. With over 100 pitch frameworks, ranging from enterprise sales to career development, capital raise, and more, Brevity gets you prepared for all of the high-stakes communication scenarios you'll encounter in your professional and personal journey. The chosen framework and associated Brevity guidance will walk you through a series of prompts to ensure you have the right story, content, and message. Keep track of your pacing with Brevity's timing logic to make sure you're delivering a concise message. Brevity guidance is uniquely designed to help you craft the correct talking tracks in the right sequence. Combined with the best-in-class example library, Brevity cuts through writer's block, spurs ideas, and saves you time. Different language appeals to different audiences. Brevity's pitch intelligence analyzes each statement with your chosen audience in mind and identifies and helps refine suboptimal pitch language. Work through the suggestions in each category to improve your brevity score and finish crafting your pitch. Now that you have your story, content, and message, it's time to perfect your delivery. Pitchback provides a teleprompter-style interface to record yourself delivering your pitch, as well as engage in interactive role-play scenarios to practice handling common objections and questions. Once you're ready, easily send your pitch script, video recording, and additional documents to your friends and colleagues for feedback. They'll take a quick survey and you'll get their responses directly in the Brevity platform. Brevity has helped countless organizations and individuals secure capital, grow sales, acquire new jobs, and more. Are you pitching with Brevity?
Awesome. So this is going to be like a little bit of a disjointed transition. We actually don't want to spend the majority of this webinar with all of you talking about our product. We want to get into a little bit more of Kelvin's founder experience, and we very much know and appreciate the challenge and grind of needing to be in that founder spot, whether you have an existing team or you're a solo founder at this point. The founder life means that you are selling yourself and your company all the time, and often getting rejected or being told no, or like, I don't get it. And so hopefully that video just helps you at a high level understand what Brevity's software is, so that if Kelvin references it as he's talking about his journey, that you're not like, what are you talking about? But I'm going to like kind of change gears and actually pivot it over to you, Kelvin, of can you give like a super Brevity overview of what your kind of like inception story is for starting Brevity?
I'll try my best with Brevity. Ready, set, go. So grew up in West Philadelphia, born and raised. Not a joke, right around the corner from Will Smith. Well, that's controversial with the slap. But I started off as a CPA at Ernst & Young, went into management consulting in New York City. And then my first taste of the startup life, I joined as the 5th employee of a tech company in Denver, Colorado, called ThrivePass, which was a corporate wellness software as a service solution. Knock on wood, hopefully the second best decision that was made in my career. I was blessed. The CEO and founder of that company, when I was the age of 27, said, you know what, you have the makings of a tech CEO. When you're mature and you have a great business idea, I'm going to be one of the earliest investors in your company. His name is Wade Rosen. He doesn't care I bring up his name, but Wade was a great mentor to me when I was at that company. After ThrivePass, I started a company called Humble Warrior Advisors. And just to give some context, when I was at ThrivePass, I managed sales, ops, product. I saw that company grow from 5 employees to roughly 65 by the time I left. So kind of this jack of all trades. I started a freelance consulting shop called Humble Warrior Advisors, where I was helping early stage entrepreneurs get to that next major milestone. But I found myself helping out the most with the pitch, whether that was to prospective customers and investors. Now, I'm a huge book nerd, and the 4 pieces of literature that I would say inspired this concept: Made to Stick by Dan and Chip Heath, Why They Buy by Cherry Tree, Story Brand, and the book that really took it over the edge, that really pushed this inception of Brevity, was 3-Minute Rule by Brant Pivotage. Brant has pitched over 300 television shows and movies, including Bar Rescue, Biggest Loser, and Amazing Race. So I was blessed to actually have an hour Zoom call with Brant, May 20th of 2020, where I had one of my clients pitch Brant to see if they implemented the best practices from his book. At the tail end of the call, he highlighted that he was looking to bridge the gap from learning to application by providing an online course. And that spurred an idea for me of like, is that necessarily the right approach? So I asked myself the question, if someone has an amazing idea, but they have difficulty crafting and delivering a persuasive pitch and presentation, what are the available tools or resources in the marketplace? And on one end, there's expensive pitch coaches and consultants like myself. And what I found, people found value in what I was providing, but they couldn't necessarily afford $285, $300 an hour to help clarify their message, right? And then on the other end, you have these expert books, blogs, YouTube channels that I highlighted, but we're all busy founders, right? And it can be very time consuming and overwhelming to learn and apply those insights from all those resources into action. And then I'm like, all right, let me take a step back. What's going on with the pitch and presentation software as a service space? And my research showed that 98% of the market was hyper-focused on pitch deck aesthetics, slide design, layout, and formatting. But we've all seen, all been in presentations with pretty decks, but they lack substance. And we like to say at Brevity, anybody can put lipstick on a pig. And we saw a gap in the market for having the right story, content, messaging, and delivery. And then that's kind of how we saw a niche in terms of content and delivery, but with a story arch. So if you don't have a pitch deck and you need to articulate what you do, why someone should care, and what are the best next steps to work together, that's where Brevity does a really good job of fitting in across a wide range of scenarios, from fundraising, sales, interviewing, asking somebody out on a date. That's a joke. But making sure you have that right story, content, and messaging.
Awesome. That was lovely and very Brevity.
Cool.
Nice job. I know there's like 5 other little sub stories within that, but I feel like just staying true to sort of how we framed this, and like getting to a little bit more of the real talk of like it will get meta sometimes, because like the company is based on sort of delivering pitches and kind of taking the pain out of those presentations or helping you fail less. But there's even with a great pitch, or like even with a great presentation, even for someone who's super extroverted and confident like you, Kelvin, like there's a ton of failure and there's still a ton of no's. So like, I don't know, can you share just a little bit less of the shiny stuff of like, as you were building Brevity, kind of where you heard no, or like how you handled that personal rejection?
Without a question. So let's talk about Wade Rosen. So when I was 27, he said, Kelvin, when you got a great business idea and you're mature, I'll be one of the earliest investors in your company. So in the early stages of Brevity, Wade was aware. He was aware of what was building. He was intrigued. Very busy. He was intrigued with the concept of Brevity. So I went to ask him. We went to a restaurant called George and the Dragon in Minnesota and in Minneapolis. And I said, hey, I went for my big ass, 250 grand. Love to have you in as an investor. So, and this is super early, not any validation yet. And he started asking me some questions. Well, how many people has the tool helped raise capital for? What's their willingness to pay? And I'm like, don't worry about that. You told me at 27 that, you're going to, make an investment, into my company when I'm mature and have a good business idea. And I thought those were the two, important pieces. And basically he was like, well, Kelvin, if you validate these assumptions, I will write you a check. And I was devastated. I was like, wait, you're not keeping your word. You told me that you were going to invest when these two pieces of criteria, and it was the best thing that could have ever happened. Taught me a valuable lesson for everybody on this call, and why the Lean Startup Canvas is super relevant is, have you validated your assumptions? So there was 2 key pieces of learnings in that conversation with Wade. One, making sure I validated the assumptions. So that's when eventually ended up meeting Jessica, did the proof of concept with the University of Minnesota, a few more proof of concepts, but then simultaneously, I thought that he was one of the few people in my network that actually could write a check. So that also made me think about, all right, who else for my friends and family round could possibly support? I needed to raise capital because the founding team at that point needed, some cash to continue to build the product. So it forced me to ask one of my favorite questions in the fundraising journey, especially at the friends and family round, is who have I positively impacted their heart, mind, and wallet, and also has a lot of money? Whose mind, wallet, whose heart, mind, and wallet have I positive impact? And I got the whiteboard in the back here, but I went on a whiteboarding spree. I started from kindergarten all the way up to, 2.5 years ago when we started this. I just started whiteboarding. And what ended up happening at the end result of it, the friends and family round, we raised around like 232 grand. And the number one source of capital came from this executive business coaching group called Allied Executives that I was in. The number two source of capital came from my professors and peers that went to Villanova University. And then the third source of capital was, this is an ironic one, the parents of the kids I coached during my grad school program. So that's just kind of a way I didn't go into coaching expecting to like, hey, when I start a company in 10 years, you're going to write me a check for 25 grand. But having that impact and asking that question led us to that end outcome.
That's awesome. Well, so like just still being real or pressuring you a little bit, it's still like a win. It's still a win that you got that 232K in the friends and family round. Like that's awesome. And so other than just thinking differently about who you asked, or like maybe broadening the pool of people that you were considering as like potential angel investors or people to get those funds from, like how did you actually close that? Or how did you, like, were you getting rejected a lot when you were trying to raise that? Or what was
so we ended up pitching 130 investors, and we ended up closing 11. So that's roughly around an 8% close ratio. So that was super painful. And I see somebody's comment here about how to overcome investor rejection. So what helped me to get to brass tacks is normalizing rejection based off of people that have been super successful. So a few examples. You think about Walt Disney and you think about Kentucky Fried Chicken. There's statistics out there that it took them over 80 pitches to receive their first check. So, there's stories about Airbnb, Canva, which is a super, successful unicorn company, woman-led, that she experienced 130 rejections when she went to Silicon Valley. So I would say the first way that helped me overcome investor rejection was really around normalizing rejection based off of people that have been super, super successful. I would say the second area that helped a lot with overcoming investor rejection, Simon Sinek has a YouTube video on courage. What's the definition of courage? He's asking the question: does courage come? Is it externally driven, or is it internally driven? And he actually ends up using the analogy of someone walking on a tightrope, and the safety net is under the tightrope. The safety net represents the quality of your relationships. So with that rejection, being able to lean on my parents, being able to lean on some of the earlier investors, being able to lean on some of my friends, and also therapists, right, was also a very, it helped me keep going. So that courage to keep going wasn't necessarily internally, but it was actually the quality of the relationships that I had. And last point I have about therapy, I was one of my mentors. I'm an East Coaster. I'm very aggressive, very emotional, right? And one of my mentors said that your emotions can either be fuel or interference. And it's our job for us to make sure that 90+% of the time I'm using my emotions as fuel. So he challenged me to go to my therapist and asked me to get help when becoming what's called a professional emotions processor, right? So I was taught a lot of different journaling techniques. One in particular called RAIN. The R stands for recognition of the emotion. The A stands for acceptance of the emotion. The I stands for investigating, getting to a root cause as to why. And the N stands for the nurturing and non-identification of the emotion. So you can really process it so you can show up your relaxed best self when you are facing a lot of rejection and burnout.
That's awesome. I know you like crammed, that was like some really fast tips like crammed into a short amount of time. I'm sure we could spend like a whole webinar just talking about like therapy techniques and but yeah, Kelvin and I both work really well together because we can be supportive of each other, but we're also very real about like today's rough and like being able to come in and be honest about sort of where we're at. So I feel like a huge piece of what you just shared, Kelvin, to emphasize for people is how even when it goes well, it is so difficult. And like, especially early on, it's really hard to separate in those early rounds of fundraising or, just sharing your idea with people when it's just an idea and you haven't built anything yet. You really are pitching yourself. You're pitching yourself and your ability to go execute it. Like it's so complicated and it's really hard to disentangle someone's rejection of your idea from their rejection of you. So like, if you take nothing away from this, like, I hope you all hear that, like, you need support from others in your network and like from resources to really be able to like keep up that grind. Whether you're doing it great or you're having a lot of challenges, it's just like, that's just real. So
yeah, and one other thing, Jay, to keep in mind that that's super helpful, an acronym that I think about is, are you getting your meds? It's an acronym called MEDS, meditation, exercise, diet, sleep. Now and I'm always constantly thinking about, all right, those 4 variables, where can I either step that up where I'm feeling a little off? So that's another thing that was helpful for me that I also learned in this journey to make sure that I'm doing things to ensure I get my meds on a daily basis.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to like take us too off track, but I want to encourage folks in the chat that if just so that we're tailoring like kind of the back half of this to your experience and not making assumptions about who's tuning into the webinar. If you could choose like what for you the most challenging part of raising capital has been and just like throw one word into the chat to just make sure Kelvin and I aren't like aren't anchoring on the wrong parts of your challenges, that would be super helpful. So like some examples, is handling rejection hard for you? Is like, are you super tough and handling rejection is not hard, but you just can't get the meetings, like you're having trouble getting in the door? Are you already starting to get like bad vibes from people about like the looming recession? People are shutting you down before you even start. And then, or is actually delivering the pitch and making the ask the hard thing for you? So we'll just like give it a second and see how people's response. Yeah. These are very
These are good.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put in the chat, because I see a theme. I'm going to put one of my favorite fundraising equations in this chat and make sure I'm not just sending it to Peter, sending it to everyone. Hold up.
I'll take the advice too, so.
It'll be 2 seconds. And this also functions. All right, so my favorite fundraising and kind of sales equation is results equals right fit investor, which can be interchanged with customer times quality interaction times quantity, right? So let's start from right to left. When we think about quantity, if we think about the examples I used a little bit earlier, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Walt Disney, over 80 pitches to get their first check, right? So that's just, no matter how great your product is, and some people are talking about lead investor as well, like I thought Wade Rosen was going to be my lead investor. I had to keep pitching. So part of this one variable is a quantity, getting enough at bats, making sure your pipeline is full, right? A rule of thumb typically is you want to have 3 to 4x your pipeline value in order to hit your target goal, right? So what that means is right now, Brevity, we just completed a $1 million raise. For us, it's important for us to have sent out, to be on the safe side, almost $4 million worth of safe agreements to actualize that $1 million goal. Again, just baseline rules of thumb. The other part, as we work backwards, is quality interaction, right? What is a subcomponent of quality interaction is having a clear, concise, and compelling pitch, which Brevity is good for. But the other part of quality interaction, being a good person, building rapport, some of the softer skills. But where I trip up is sometimes answering questions with brevity. So how do you handle the common objections in the investor process? How do you, succinctly talk about how your investor is going to be able to earn a return? So there's commonly asked questions that you need to be prepared for when you're pitching investors that are pretty standard. And then the first variable is right fit investor. So just making it plain, if someone's a cryptocurrency investor and I'm pitching brevity to a cryptocurrency investor, that's the wrong target. So again, where it's tough, sometimes VCs aren't as transparent about their criteria, but some are, right? So making sure that, and I hate research, to be honest with you, but even if you have to outsource it, make sure you're scanning and actually looking at the websites and looking at the investment thesis. So if you're pitching I was at an event last night with a fund out of Minnesota, and their seed fund is very clear. Once you guys hit over 50K in monthly recurring revenue, call us, right? Nothing wrong with getting an early introduction, but a lot of these funds, if they're doing a good job, they're telling you, we do accept pre-revenue. And one of the big things that I like to do on those introductory calls is, can you walk me through, because you have an opportunity to ask the VC question. Before we dive in, I'd love to learn about, the last investment you made and why, if they can disclose. And tell me about an investment that got close or in the middle of the process and you guys decided to pass. Tell us why. The more concrete you can get, that helps you build your story.
Yeah, I love that. Well, a couple of things. I'm just monitoring the chat. I thank you all for being so candid like this. There's no perfect foolproof way to go about it. It's really just about as much support as you can get and sort of sharing that feedback and sharing your experiences. That's what we're hoping to get going in the chat. So, but I just wanted to point out something someone mentioned that I think is spot on and gets back to Kelvin's formula of, you kind of just have to if it's not a yes, assume it's a no and keep moving, but keep their information. So, obviously don't continue to go back to them if they're completely the wrong fit, their investment thesis, or they're in a different industry or something. But Kelvin, maybe you can share an example of there's some people that you got no's from initially, but you did a good job of keeping them updated as you got success elsewhere, and they came in later. So maybe it was a no initially, but you were able to keep just show them that you were legit, and now you're getting more interest from them.
Yeah, absolutely. So number one, the Wade Rosen example, he gave clear directive, right? He said, you validate these assumptions, I write you a check. And at this point, he's over 6 figures invested into this company, right? The other, I'm trying to think of we have 5 institutional funds inside capital. Yeah, there's been a few funds that didn't pass on us early. One of the objections, we didn't have a CTO, right? So it was well, I can't afford a CTO. I need your money to afford a quality CTO, but we kept them in the loop. We got an amazing CTO, Eric Nelson, shout out. And then we were able to eventually because of that, we were able to raise a lot more capital. But we just kept them in the loop with stakeholder updates. I'm not a monthly guy myself personally. I know a lot of founders like to do monthly. I like to spread it out a little bit so the message doesn't get distilled and they just ignore it. So I like to do like my rule of thumb with stakeholder updates, and people can take it or leave it, is when I have an amazing news that's just wow, I send it out, or I try and do at least quarterly.
Got it. Cool.
And then we were able to get investors back on the loop from that.
Nice. Well, there's like all about it. Like keep sort of asking questions and sharing in the chat. In some cases, we're going to have like a point that we can make or something that might be useful. Like we're probably not going to like be an expert on every single scenario you guys are framing, but I'll try to keep my eye on it. And I guess one of the things that you mentioned, though it was a little ways back, Kelvin, but I don't want to miss the chance to kind of show off sort of like what we're focusing on or what we're seeing, is that quality interaction piece where you definitely want to have like a good tight presentation, like a good pitch that people have given you feedback on, that you are like validating that people are finding it interesting and finding it compelling, that you're getting your point across. But being able to like in the moment answer hard questions, or being super prepared to like handle people's like, sometimes people are dicks, sometimes they're abrasive, sometimes they're super friendly, like you never really know what to expect. So you just like being able to receive a question calmly without getting reactive or without being kind of defensive or sort of thrown off is something that we've noticed can be like a huge game changer in how investors receive you. So I don't know, can you talk a little bit about that? Or like, I don't know if we have time, I guess, but do you think we do have time to show them the
Absolutely.
tool? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So to Jessica's point, what we're going to do now is show one aspect of our software that we just launched called Brevity Role Play. Can you guys see my screen? So
yes.
The context here is I'm going to end with this is the end of a pitch. And then you're going to see the kind of how our software not only helps you with the first impression, but more importantly, how do you answer the objections, or how do you answer the questions from investors? So I'm going to play this now. Hold up, let me turn off my video here, and then I'm going to, all right, go here. And we believe it's going to become a common phrase to hear worldwide. Are you pitching with brevity?
Good pitch, Kelvin. But there's so much more to closing business and securing capital besides an elevator pitch. I don't see how elevator pitch software is scalable and sticky.
Josh, we totally understand your concern. And from listening to what our customers need and value, we've recently launched Brevity Role Play, which simulates how you handle objections in the sales process and how you answer questions from investors.
Oh, wow. I didn't know this was a part of the software. What's your ask, Kelvin?
Well, we're currently seeking $800,000 in capital. We've recently closed 500 from a prestigious fund out of Cincinnati.
Well, how are you deploying your funds, Kelvin?
Well, 59% will be spent on go-to-market, 28% on product, and 13% on legal and administrative. But more importantly, we're forecasting $125K in monthly recurring revenue by August 2023. Put us in a position for Series A.
It seems like you know your stuff and you've made your product stickier since we last spoke. I'm in for $300,000 to close the round. Send me your safe agreement and wiring instructions.
Josh, we're super excited to have you on this journey. This will be a massive exit for the both of us.
So a sort of shameless plug, I guess, but just so you all like, I know that wasn't part or super clear in the initial video, but that is the tool that we just added to like our software and the capabilities. And it looked like longer because Kelvin set it up so that you'd be able to see a good example like quickly for this webinar. But something that you're able to do in the software is just like add in as like tons of common objections or questions, or like, let's say you pitched an investor and they asked you something that sort of threw you off and you're like, man, I got to be ready to not like fumble that question next time. you can add it in to be interjected unexpectedly into your pitch rehearsal. So like Kelvin was ready to like, he really had the script crafted, but the big piece that we find, whether it's with sales teams or in preparing for investor pitches, is like, you're not going to know what someone, like another human being, is going to say to you. And like, so having that ability to use a tool and really rehearse and just like get super comfortable, I think can be a game changer.
Especially with that guy's voice in the background.
Yeah. It's like a weird.
The voice is so disconcerting and perfect. It's amazing.
Yeah. So I guess I know we want to save some time for Q&A and like don't want to take this longer than we need to, but I guess, Kay, getting back to that core question that we talked about and sort of was advertised around, like that overcoming rejection, or sort of, I don't know, the burnout of just, it feels like you're constantly fundraising as a founder, or even if you just closed a round, you're thinking ahead to like, are we hitting the milestones to get to our next round? And like, what would you, like, if you could kind of button it up for people, what would you encourage folks to be thinking about or implementing?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one of the biggest things that I didn't mention on here is a strong belief system and a vision of what you're doing, and having some real clarity as to your why, right? Without that, if you're only doing it for the cash, like just for me in brevity, there have been times in my life where I've been overlooked, I've missed out on opportunities, but what I found greater pain is actually being misunderstood. So our why at Brevity is helping those that have been misunderstood. And I've been in these positions, whether it was on the athletic field, whether it's in life or working for a previous company. That why is super important. Having a clear why as to why you're actually building your company, that's one variable of it. We talked about the quality relationships and taking your meds, meditation, exercise, diet, sleep. This is hard. I don't have a lot of sleep myself right now. But I got a great team. I got Jessica. I got a childhood friend as a co-founder from 3 years old, Maximilian Huff. So I would say the quality of your relationships, making sure you're taking your meds. You got to do therapy. There's no bad. I'm in therapy once a week, every Tuesday, 4 p.m. Jill Hopkins, shout out. Thank you. Right. Make sure you're getting that support, because the game between the ears is so super important to make sure you're spiritually fed to deal with the rejection, deal with voices, people doubting you. It's super important to helping you overcome rejection. And that formula I put in there: results equals right fit investor times quality interaction times quantity. So it's a kind of a combination of functional things, making sure you have a clear, concise, and compelling pitch, which Brevity does a really good job of. And having that tenacity to know that this is a numbers game.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
The normalization of knowing it's a numbers game actually helps you deal with the rejection better. Again, not saying we're amazing, but we've raised over $2 million since we started this company in September 2020, I believe. The friends and family round was 8% close ratio. So that was a lot of pitching.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm just noticing a couple of things. So first off, Peter, I don't want to like steal your thunder if you handle the Q&A differently, but I just noticed your comments are super, super valid, Michael. But you did just something that I would challenge or sort of like throw out there to people in case you feel like you identify with this. There are all different types of founders. Sometimes people are like the smartest human being you can imagine, and they've identified like a really legitimate critical problem that they've got an idea to solve, but they're like an intellectual or like a researcher or something, and they absolutely suck at talking to people. Like my life before working with founders was working in a consulting firm, and particularly helping with a lot of like people who are doing infosec work and like just the most like IT of IT consulting you can imagine. And very often like the very person you would want on your tech team, sort of like helping you with some, type of IT issue, is the last person you would want selling the solution, because they're going to get fired up or talk about stuff that like a layperson or a consumer just does not care about. So I mean, yeah, I 100%. Like if you are blessed to be both like the idea visionary person and the talker, the way that Kelvin is, because we're doing something in the sales space, like, but not everybody is in that position. Sometimes you're doing something super technical or super niche and you're trying to share it with or convince an investor who knows zero things about what you're talking about. And so that's kind of where we're trying to thread the needle a little bit with helping people be concise and compelling. Kind of get
Yeah,
out
I
of your
mean,
own way sometimes.
it's a common stumbling block for people coming to entrepreneurship from individual contribution at a previous startup or even at like a mid-sized company. Like, I know how to do all the nuts and bolts. Why am I not closing investment? Why can't I convince a co-founder? It's because they're not used to pitching and they're not good at sales. They're not good at communicating the basics, the most important part of the idea. And to Michael's point, the opportunity, right? Because you're selling an opportunity to everybody you're pitching, whether it's a co-founder or an investor, and you have to get good at communicating that. And I think there are a variety of ways to look at it, balancing kind of the founder problem fit, Kelvin, that you talk about, like your personal passion. Is it a problem you're familiar with or that you faced? You know, are you like living the problem and solution in your product? And balancing the reality that this is a financially motivated endeavor for both sides, right? Investors are in this by and large to make money. Like, that is why they're in it. So you do have to have a compelling pitch, both from a, I am qualified to do this and I care about it, and also from the perspective of, hey, there is a business here and it addresses a critical need in a large market. And balancing those two sometimes can be really difficult, especially coming from individual contribution.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why we exist, right? Is to help people with that TurboTax-like flow that you guys saw in the beginning, of making sure that they have the right talk tracks in the right sequence. So people that are very technical and may want to get into the weeds of their product, that they're actually telling the bigger picture and where the opportunity lies. So we like to call it at Brevity, you follow the yellow brick road when you go into our platform. And that's part of the reason why we've definitely created this software.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we're so excited to see it too. You know, you're bringing something that takes a lot of practice and was at likely, you know, a higher tier price point that a lot of people making this transition could immediately afford, and making it scalable via software, which is very much in line with what we try to do at Gust. And, you know, to Michael's point, like, if you're going to be a CEO of a startup, you have to get good at this. Like, this is your job as the CEO. And, you know, it's not like a requirement that you can ignore.
You can't.
Yeah, we agree. Yeah, we agree with you, Michael. We're not trying to say that but just that sometimes people who are entering into that spot, they don't have the skill set and they need to get better at it like real fast, like yesterday. So
yeah, it's a required skill set, but it's one that not everybody has.
And one book that I feel like I want to highlight that does a good job. I mean, it's a little lengthy, but it's really good. It's called Founding Sales. I'll put it in the chat. But it was specifically designed as a book for people that, like, he came from a non-sales background and he happened to be on a co-founding team where he was the most extroverted of the introverts. So they put him in sales essentially. So that's a really good book that helps people just change their philosophy and mindset towards becoming a sales CEO, and then Michael, and help them level up.
So I guess like, please continue to ask questions in the chat, or I don't know, I guess, Peter, do people submit them other ways, or I have not been looking at the Q&A, I've just been looking at the chat.
But I don't see anything in the Q&A. Folks, if you have any questions, and yes, we are going to get a recording of this and send it out. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in chat or in the Q&A.
Yeah. And just to like sort of put our money where our mouth is, I know so a couple people asked this like way earlier up in the chat. So I have been paying attention, but just like didn't want to jump in at the wrong points to interrupt Kelvin. But we're we're in the same boat as you. We're a super early startup. This is a space that we're really passionate about. And both Kelvin and I have spent a ton of time coaching other people, but also like, you know, really doing the research to build our software tool. And So if you are interested in trying Brevity and actually getting feedback on your pitch, whether it's like the wording or your delivery on video from us, like we're here for that. Like we'd love to actually give you feedback. We might be like signing ourselves up for pain if like everyone actually takes us up on it, but we're willing to take the risk. So if you check out, just like knowing that this is going to be out there, we'll have a link and a code in the email that goes out with the recording. So when you send out, when Peter, you and the Gust team send out the follow-up email, whether it goes out tomorrow or later, you'll have a code or like a way that you can actually access it for free. So Kelvin, it looks like, are you going to show them how to do that?
Yeah, is it showing or no?
It is. Yep, I see
Yep.
your screen.
Yeah. So what Jessica is saying is, what do we say? The first 25 people, or
Yeah.
Yep, first 25 people. What you would do is once you go through our step process to create, whether it's elevator pitch, pre-seed, whatever that may be, you'll be able to type in email addresses to Jessica and myself, and we will provide feedback on your pitch.
Yeah. And like, we're just like you, like we're a company of 5 people and Kelvin and I are the one making the offer. So it will literally be us. Take it or leave it, I guess, if you buy that, we can be helpful. But truly, like, I think the more that you can practice with anyone, get accustomed to saying the words out loud. Test your message on different types of people. Some people who maybe know your space in your industry, some people who like think you're speaking Chinese or some other foreign language when you're talking about something unique, and just see like, is this accessible and compelling for a layperson? Is it accessible and compelling for someone who really like knows this maybe as well as I do? We think rehearsal and putting yourself out there as much as possible is super valuable, both in helping you kind of get practiced so that you don't burn out as easily, but also because you just never know where a yes is going to come from. Like you can have an educated guess, but sometimes people surprise you with like, wow, I was just talking to somebody in the grocery store about this and like they referred me to my next person. So
well, a few things. Good call out on a website. 2022. We're actually revamping our landing page now. So and then someone had a question around how can I find the right investor if I don't have warm introductions and cold email is my option? Is there any options? Any other options? A few things that I've heard. One, Twitter has also been a good source of investors, but there's also a good slew of investors that like Hustle Fund. We'll put these in the chat. Hustle Fund, Right Side Capital Management. There's a good amount of funds actually that respond in 48 out, like literally within 48 hours. And they give it's democratized. You don't need a warm introduction. So Right Side Capital Management, Hustle Fund. What's the other one off the top? I think it's called
NFX
Jumpstart.
is out there as well.
Yep, Jumpstart VC out of Silicon Valley. That's another one where they respond within 24 to 48 hours. What I've done is the NFX is another one that Peter highlighted. What I do is, I'm a big fan of closed mouths don't get fed. Like I really want to be told no. Jess knows this pretty well. They joke around. I'm CEO. I think my job is CFO, Chief Follow-up Officer, right? So, my rule of thumb is on a per fund basis, I typically try and hit up 3 to 5 people at the fund, from the senior associate all the way up to the managing partner, right? And I have a cadence of trying to go either through, they usually have a preferred way to apply. I do that. I go to their link when I don't have a warm intro. I go to their preferred way to apply. I go to their LinkedIn's, and I'll be frank. Like I have used Zoom Info to pull cell phone numbers to actually cold call. Again, like I lean on the assertive side, but this game you're competing. There's a concept called, people are always talking about like indirect or direct competition. Like we're in capital competition. So everybody on this call is competing for capital, especially in this market. So when you're formulating your story and your opportunity, you got to think about, I'm competing with the next fintech, and I'm competing with a retail oriented product or service. So capital competition is something that we're always thinking of as well.
And thank you. A couple of you have said like, hey, show us more, like what does it cost? When we send out the info in the email, the follow-up email, you'll get a code to just use it for free for, I think it's a month, right?
Right.
So yeah, you'll then you can, we're not trying to sell you in this webinar as much as we're showing off our stuff. Then you can just test it out and drive it around and follow up with us if you have questions. But it's very kind of you, the couple of you that have asked about that. Thank you. Any other questions?
While we're waiting on other audience questions, I'd love to keep digging into that. One of the things that we talk about quite a bit is kind of building your network of serendipity. And Jessica, you talked about this, you never know where the yes is going to come from or where the connection is going to come from. And Kelvin, you talked about, figuring out for that first round of funding, you went all the way back to kindergarten to see what does my network actually look like? And I think when you're doing this stuff, it is so important to inspect the resources you already have access to and build the network of resources. So if you're not hanging out with other entrepreneurs, if you're not going to, if you can, a physical spot now to see pitches, or going to the pitch teardown sessions that are probably hosted by your local entrepreneurship center, or you're not figuring out every angel investing event that you can get to start talking to these people, developing conversations and relationships with them, then you're missing out on building that network of serendipity. And it can be in person, it can be online, but you got to build it somewhere. And it's, it's the people it's your family, it's your friends, it's the people you've worked with. As you said, it's the people that you've brought value to and that bring value to you. But can you talk about that mindset and how yours kind of came together?
Yeah, so the heart, mind, and wallet one, that was good for the friends and family round. But now we primarily raise through fund, like VCs. We have 5. And I was just thinking about, the first institutional check we received came from a founder in the portfolio. Trying to think, who was the second institutional? Second, hold on one sec. Right Side Capital. Right Side Capital is great because you can just apply and they have their criteria super clear on there. No introduction needed. The fund out of Austin, that came, I'll be honest, that came from a networking event that was very boozy. A young, 25-year-old was wasted. I told him about my company, 350 grand later. Right?
Probably wrote it off as nope, that one's not closing.
Right? Yeah. Right. So the fourth one came from an introduction in the Twin Cities of another founder in the ecosystem. The fifth one came from one of our VCs. So now, once you get in with the other thing is, once you do have these angels, leverage your angels and your VCs to get connections because they know other people and they're incentivized.
Yeah, that's part of their job to get their return.
And they're also incentivized I also am a strong believer in your go-to-market success is contingent, quite frankly, on the quality of your relationships, right? So we have a wish list of accounts and I'm a pest to my VCs. You said you have a connection to Stanford, their innovation department? Okay,
make it.
Good, make it. Yesterday, right? So again, being more polite than I'm being facetious here, but once you got the network, leverage the network.
Yeah, and I think building those
I know
relationships.
you mentioned this to me early on when when we were talking about actually working together, but not everybody is like Kelvin, but a lot of founders, to just emphasize what Peter said of your a connection to an investor that's real might come from another founder who's oh yeah, I got a check from so-and-so, or I pitched these people and I was not a fit for them, but sounds like you are. sometimes people have like a zero sum mentality and they won't share, but a lot of people do. They're like, but just a lot of people don't have that view, and they're willing to kind of like help you understand, or sort of give you a leg up if you feel like there's a good connection there. So to Peter's point, like networking with other founders and like just putting yourself out there and sharing what you're trying to accomplish it's surprising sometimes how fruitful that can be.
Yeah, and I think so much of this is relationship management, that thinking about it from a zero sum perspective really puts you at a disadvantage, because your next raise is only as strong as your current network. And to build that network, you have to be having honest, open exchanges with people where you're building each other up and providing value on both sides.
Other thing, again, if money is an option, I'll just be frank. Like sometimes you don't get love in your own backyard. So Austin and Silicon Valley saved this company. To be super vulnerable and honest, I had to fly out and stay with friends in San Francisco and Austin to make sure we could keep this company going. So don't be afraid to step outside the box of where you are if you're not necessarily getting the love in your area. But the irony is we stepped outside and now we're getting a lot more love where we are.
Yeah. Well, I know we're close on time too. Like so just to reiterate, a couple of you have been kind about following up with us. We'll share all of the our contact info and kind of how to get in touch with us, and whether it's to use the tool or just to connect with us, we'll put that in the follow-up email that the Gust team will send out. So just look for that there. And then, but I don't know, any other final thoughts, or we want to be respectful of your time and punctual. So
I think what would be good, Jay, is we have our head of customer success too. So when we send out that recap, again, we're still at the early phase, guys. We don't have all the answers here. Our tech is great, but also can improve. So we do want feedback on the platform. We're 2.5 years into September 2020. That's when we started this company. So we're still early stage as well, but we're open to feedback on how we can optimize the user experience.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for being here. It is great to connect with like-minded founders, especially at the earliest stages. I really love what you're doing. I think it's going to be helpful to a lot of the Gust ecosystem. As Jessica mentioned, we will be sending a follow-up either tomorrow or Monday that contains the recording and all of the information you need to access Brevity software or follow up with Kelvin or Jessica and get more information. We plan to continue having programming with them in the future, so you'll have more opportunities to ask questions there as well. And keep an eye out. I think we have, more events than we have ever done this month, continuing on the founder-facing launch series of our founder curriculum. So I hope to see you again soon. Thank you so much for being here, hosts and audience, and have an awesome rest of the week.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all. Have a great day.